Hello, anatomists and physiologists. This is our hopefully last video in our blood vessel series. This is part 5. This is regulation of blood flow. Tissue perfusion, that's a new word. Tissue perfusion is just science words for blood circulation through the body. And there's a good amount of events that happen in tissue perfusion. One of the things is that there's gas and nutrient exchange in the tissues. So we'll drop off oxygen, deliver nutrients, and then pick up those metabolic wastes. We'll pick up carbon dioxide and all the rest of it. So that's systemically. But when we're in the lungs, we have gas exchange. We pick up oxygen from the atmosphere, we drop off carbon dioxide that was in our lungs as waste. Um, and we also do a lot of other things, right? Like we digest food in our GI tract and we absorb those nutrients in the blood. And then any extra fluid that we got, that gets excreted as urine, and that's done by the kidneys. We have a whole unit both on the GI tract and a unit on the kidneys. So the details of which of these are a future us problem. But tissue perfusion or blood circulation through the whole body is really important. So it's controlled in two major ways. First, we control it from the outside. That's called extrinsically. Something that's extrinsic is on the outside. This is usually the nervous system. Usually. But it's like outside of the blood vessel, okay? And then intrinsically is from the inside. So that's the blood vessel itself. And a lot of the times this happens, so within the blood vessel itself. A lot of times, both of these happen in the arterioles, not the arteries, not the venules, but the arterioles. Because vasoconstriction and dilation of arterioles specifically really influences if blood is actually going to that tissue or organ in a significant way. That happens at the level of the arteriole. Okay, this is actually the last slide already of this video. I just want to show you, I really like this image from your textbook because one, it's beautifully colorful coded, and also it just describes so much information in just this teeny tiny little picture. So let's chat about it. What we're seeing here is that everything that's in green, everything that's on this left-hand side, these are all the intrinsic controls, the inside controls. Another word for that, I'm going to highlight because this is a new word, is called auto-regulation. Oh, I should highlight that in pink actually. Auto-regulation, so we can see a little bit better. Auto meaning self-regulation, meaning to regulate, to make it right. And then the other side, the yellowy orangey side, those are all extrinsic controls from the outside. So we can see that each of these bigger boxes, or each of these boxes describing the intrinsic or extrinsic controls describe. So for example, if we're looking at the intrinsic controls, we have metabolic controls, myogenic controls, myo meaning muscle, right? So muscle controls, and how we're distributing blood flow. The extrinsic controls are either neural or hormonal, similar to how blood pressure is regulated. And the extrinsic controls, their big goal is MAP, mean arterial pressure. Extrinsic controls also have a goal of making sure that the blood is distributed properly for different activities. If we're exercising, if we're cold, if we're hot, all of these types of things. Okay, so let's first look at the things that cause vasodilation. That's when that lumen of the vessel gets larger. Lumen of the vessel gets larger. So on the intrinsic side, in the green side, we see that most of this is a metabolic control. So when blood flow isn't meeting the body's metabolic needs, then that's a problem. We need to fix it because all of these metabolic products get out of whack. I'm going to zoom in here. All of those metabolic products get out of whack. Like oxygen gets too low, carbon dioxide gets too high, We might be too acidic. We have too many hydrogen ions going on. Our ions are out of whack. You have too much potassium, that kind of thing. But also, we can release these substances down here. And the one I want to draw your attention to, that I've drawn in red, is nitric oxide. We abbreviate that like NO, nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, your textbook describes as a potent vasodilator, which means that it's a really strong thing that promotes vasodilation. So all of these things will cause vasodilation in some way, either direct action on the vessel to cause vasodilation, or direct action on the cell to make nitric oxide, and then that will release nitric oxide to vasodilate. So then if the opposite is true, so there's lots of oxygen, not as much CO2, and if all of these were opposite is what I'm trying to say, then we would be on this side and we would be releasing endothelins. And these guys, these metabolic controls, they promote vasoconstriction. So you see how if this is true, then we get vasodilation. If the opposite's true, then we get vasoconstriction. But still, the thing to know is that nitric oxide is the strongest one of all of these. Okay, if we flip over to the extrinsic side, the yellowy orangey side, we can see that there's two main things that cause vasodilation. Two main things. We have the neural controls, the hormonal controls. If sympathetic input goes down, sympathetic tone decreases, that means the PSNS starts taking over a little bit more. What's happening is that then the vessel will dilate. So less sympathetic input, vasodilation. On the hormonal side, we have ANP. We talked about this in the last video. ANP, atrial natriuretic peptide, that's made by the atria, also causes dilation of those vessels. If we were to look at the vasoconstriction, so the bottom parts, let's take a peek at the green side, the intrinsic side. We have the myogenic controls. Myogenic means control of the smooth muscle. Myo meaning muscle, right? And so we have, if those smooth muscles are detecting too much stretch rather, that smooth muscle will resist that stretch. And the opposite's true too. If the stretch is too little, then we'll vasodilate. But in this case, for causing vasoconstriction, there's too much stretch, so we're going to resist that stretch and vasoconstrict a little bit by the smooth muscle of the vessel. On the extrinsic side, we still have the same guys, neural, hormonal. And this is a lot of the same things that we talked about in the last video that influence blood pressure. So by increasing sympathetic tone, we're going to increase vasoconstriction. But also this happens to increase the blood pressure as well. And we talked about all of these hormonal controls back in the previous video too, because they all increase blood pressure, and they all also increase vasoconstriction. And those two ideas, vasoconstriction and an increase of blood pressure, are related. Both of these controls, intrinsic and extrinsic, are really important to help the body work as a coordinated whole. And that's what we want, right? To make sure that we're working as a whole functioning organism.